Kelin.
Joe.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
Before I get into mine, you got something? You want to say
Yeah.
something? Go ahead.
I mean, I don't know if it's going to be the same as yours, but
Probably is.
I mean, I feel like we have to touch on last night's debate.
Yeah.
We have to.
Yeah.
And I've got to say right off the bat, I'm so stoked. It was so refreshing, I thought, to see two people debate in a respectful manner. To me, last night's debate was a breath of fresh air. I don't know how you think. I think a lot of people would probably agree. Unfortunately, I think anybody who went into the debate undecided is probably still undecided. I don't know if it actually did anything as far as swaying anyone. But I got to say, last night was the first time I've ever seen one that was so cordial, that, you know, they were big enough to admit when their opponent made a good point or had a good idea. If they did disagree, it was done in a respectable manner. And I got to say, it really restored my faith in humanity.
Well, let me break down that faith. Because the only reason you got what you got last night, because you had two people that were brand new introduced to the machine. Right? Debates and conversations get destroyed once you've been in government long enough. Those were just two dudes that aren't used to the machine.
They're just
and you
like
actually,
fresh. And
it was probably as authentic. Well, you got to think, like almost like when you do the same job every day and you have the same conversations and it's always the same topics, you get hardened and the responses that you have are just always the same. Right?
Yeah.
So you don't get authenticity. You had two dudes there that I bet you that you turn the cameras off and let those guys go talk. They will have 90% agreement on everything, and they'll have a willingness to work on the things that they can agree on, and you would actually get something done.
For sure.
But they haven't been broken by the machine. The machine was going like this, like, I can't wait to break these people. What do you mean? Concessions and cordial behavior and intelligence coming through. We need to destroy that. Humanity can't survive that.
I actually said, I'm like, God, I wonder if during the break their running mates contacted them, were like, listen, I'm glad you're all playing nice, but this is still a fight. Could you throw some punches?
Yeah, right. And CBS, the idiot assholes that they are, they tried so hard to make the civility drop and diminish.
Stir that
the
pot.
questions that they asked and how they asked it and how they interrupted and how they moved on. They were the loser last night. I think Walz exceeded expectations. And the regular guy persona, exactly what I thought he was going to be. And he did a really good job at sticking to his principles and beliefs. And if all there is disagreement at the end of the day, then it was a good debate, right?
Yeah.
But you didn't see hostility and
name
throwing
calling.
insults. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I'll be totally honest. Going into this, I really thought Walz was going to get his ass handed to him. You know, I thought that Vance just comes off as a little more polished than Walz, and I thought that was going to be a big thing, and it was going to be obviously more of this, let's pin personalities together, the nice guy versus the bully, blah, blah, blah. And that wasn't it. Other than maybe the very, very beginning, I'm talking the first question to Walz, there was a little bit of cringy moments, but I think that was just nerves. And then he got his footing and it was fine. But yeah, neither one of them stooped to that level, which was so great. And I mean, like you said, so you're kind of saying this is sort of like the brand new hire versus a seasoned employee. Like,
exactly.
Just give it time and it will wear at your soul.
They'll break that down. They won't be so eager to compliment the other guy and be respectful and considerate. They'll wring that out of them pretty good. Yeah. Well, here's where you're wrong a little bit. Because you looked at it from the perspective of you. And it's very important that if you look at those people as just the way that we would discuss things, we can relate to that. Yeah. Right? Where you're wrong is Vance did a 10 out of 10 as far as doing the job, polished speaker, great on the debate stage. He got full marks because there weren't many foibles that you could pin on him, make fun of, mock, and the Saturday Night Live acid test, right? What could they say or do with him, and how would he be on the?
I look at it in that way too. Literally in my head, I'm seeing the people like making fun of them on SNL. So what could they do? I give Walz a 5 out of 10 only because he did some things that are going to be memed to shit, right? They are going to take some of his reaction, his mean looks and his wide-eyed looks and the spittle on his lip. I mean, the whole thing is just rich with satire. Oh, at one point he literally was like, sometimes I'm a knucklehead. And I went,
But
why would you say that?
But I love that about it. I'm going to give him personally high marks for being who he was, right? Because if you're not trying to put on a show, I think Vance is just that immaculate on that stage. I don't think he was putting on a show. I think he's just a really, really smart guy. Mm-hmm. And Walz, I think, is just a really, really, really regular guy. So if I were to be on that stage, I would be much more like Walz than I would be as JD Vance. I would stumble on my words. I would get, it wasn't even a lack of preparation. I think he did a really good job of having answers when he finally got to, responding the way that his brain was feeding him the words.
Yeah.
But he was just regular in that department.
Yeah, I think when he started, I don't know if maybe he went into it thinking he's got to have this persona, but yeah, the very first question, there was a lot of kind of stumbling, and it just looked sort of like nerves, and I was like, oh God, he's a dead man, here we go. And then like you said, he sort of, I think, just let himself be himself, and that's really where he found his footing, and it was fine. Do you... I was even trying to think of what people could possibly criticize, because obviously if you went into the debate and you were already hard leaning into one of the candidates, you kind of watch these debates as like a sporting event instead of a debate. You're not listening to listen to ideas and see what they want to say. You're listening, almost cheering on, hoping one will be better than the other. So saying that and saying what you have about JD Vance, do you find the sincerity to be real? When he goes into the heartfelt, my hearts go out to this, and I didn't know that, and my prayers to you kind of thing. I thought that was very nice. Do you think that's sincere, or would you say someone?
Well, when
would be
I say that he's immaculate in debate, I'm talking from an academic standpoint. So, storytelling as part of the debate sequence is a way of presentation, not a level of authenticity. Right. So when people are listening to your answers, to being doing it in a storytelling fashion rather than a lecture fashion, high marks. If I say, is the presenter going to give me technical data, or are they going to make a relatable story so I understand what they're saying? That's why I give him immaculate, because it's probably not part of his personality to be as relatable as his presentation allowed his words to be. So that's why he gets higher marks there. So from a technical standpoint, he nailed it.
Yeah. I mean, it was at one point I'm thinking, I said, well, I know the Democrats have already done this, but is it too late to make one more switch? Like, I saw all over Facebook, people were saying, can you imagine if these were our two? These were our two main running mates, or instead of Trump and Harris. And I'm just like, man, I feel like you would be back in that situation where you've got two good possibilities and all you're debating is someone's way of going about it.
I will tell you this. I would much rather have Walz at the top of the ticket than the bottom of the ticket, because I got a sense that, again, that if you got those two people together, there's some reasonable nature of him, that he's willing to listen and to not be hardlined. I think Kamala is just a train wreck, because I don't think she's very smart. And I also don't think there's anything reasonable in her, that you can have a conversation and think that she just has, sort of like a real drive to get something done and to serve people. I got that from Walz. So his stock value as a person went way up with me. Yeah. I still think he's just too regular of a guy in the machine. I think the machine will destroy him pretty good. I think JD Vance will survive the storm a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm almost hoping... I have been fairly undecided throughout this whole thing, but definitely leaning in a certain direction. I almost see Walz as someone who's maybe just not ready yet. Not like he can't ever be in that position. But
he won't. I'll tell you, like that's a pipe dream to ever have him as being someone that anybody would want as their president. But he is a guy that if you're hammering on something and you need concessions and you need two sides to work together, I would absolutely have more faith in him now than I did before that debate.
Would you love to see, if for wherever possible or realistic, would you love to see a swap between Vance and Trump? Maybe have Vance be the candidate?
That's probably in the future. The dude's 40 years old.
Yeah.
Right? He's as... as ready, I think, from a personality standpoint to do something like that. So I would not be surprised if he's the after Trump candidate.
Yeah, I agree. I enjoyed it. I was up too late. I really wish these debates would start earlier. But
let's talk about the CBS demons that if I left with anything, it was good debate, terrible freaking media. Like, I have hatred for the media more than I ever have.
So I asked this question to my husband last night. Has there ever been a presidential debate that was moderated by Fox News correspondents? There has been?
Yep.
Okay. I usually see NBC, CBS, things of that nature, which feels very one-sided. So I've wondered, I'm like, have we had one where the other side was kind of in the...
Yeah, and if you take all of the media, the corporations, the networks, the media networks, you find some of them that are less leaning in either direction, and so each one of them have them. So you have your opinion people who you don't want as your moderators because they're so heavily slanted. The problem is that these media groups have gotten so liberal that if you pick the ones that are least liberal, they're still more liberal than they were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's hard to find somebody who's not going to come in with an agenda, and they might not even know they're doing it. I'm sure they do. I think if you don't think the questions they picked were ones that would highlight all of the weaknesses of the Republicans on one side and skirt around the weaknesses on the Democrat, you're crazy. Go ahead and make a list of the questions that were asked and see if they led the conversation in an uncomplimentary direction around the Republican.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And how did you feel when Vance, threw it in there like, wait. No. I'm going to address this. You want to fact check? Let's fact check. And he just kept going. And then at one point they're like, well, your mics have been turned off. I said, I can still hear him. And he has a point. He did. Did you see that part?
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, where they're talking about the Haitians. Are there legally? And he's like, wait. Let's talk about what legally means. And I thought that was one clear example.
But it is absolutely apparent that the media are just an extension of the campaign for the Democrats. They are using the institutions of media as a guise, right, to just pile on and be an extension of the Democrat Party. And we don't need to do that anymore. We don't have 3 channels that are on TV. We have other platforms that are separated. Hold on. We have other platforms that are separated, like X, right?
Yeah.
You can very easily do a Spaces where you can pick the most objective, hard-on-everyone moderator, and you don't need to use the operatives that are in the media to do this shit. And I hope that's the big loser from last night. I think both candidates served the public well by doing what they did and behaving the way they did. And I think CBS needs to crash and burn. If I could burn it down and make it so they never had a voice again in politics, I would do it. Go be a sounding board for the Democrats. Put it on your marketing that you are a liberal news organization. Be opinion so everybody knows what they're getting. But if the center people don't realize that they're watching propaganda from one side and they just repeat what they heard there, think about the people who that's all they get their news from. Like you and I source it from all different places. But what about the regular people who only get that angle? And then you wonder why you get so many by default Democrats.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can see it on Facebook. Anytime somebody is strongly towards one side, they will start talking about something they just saw on the news. And you could tell what news channel they were watching.
100%.
And it's like, why is it a money issue? Why can't we get another source, another, outside third party, whatever, to come moderate these things?
This is the physical version of they, right? How that works and where people get jobs and how they make their money and how they get their influence. They're not separated. You can't say government and media, right, are 2 different institutions that don't talk to one another, right? They are all in the same vein. They're all in the same vein. And so to separate it would be, if you have somebody that was worked inside of government and then they all of a sudden get an anchor job on, in a one of the networks, that didn't happen by chance, right? Their prosperity is already earmarked when they decide what they're going to do. So let's just say you go through government and I say all nice things about you, right? And if I say all nice things about you, then you give me cushy jobs where you don't have to ever earn a living. You could just go on TV, make a bunch of money, and all I have to do is say nice things about you forever. And that is what our media is. And it happens on both sides. If you're loyal to one side, you get lots of things. And if you're disloyal, you get thrown away and you get nothing. So of course, the media is going to be conditioned to be complimentary to one side, be biased for one side because they get financial gain by being loyal to that group.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we've talked about too, where I try to look at a lot of sources online rather than on TV where you don't have edited snippets of things. And it's still kind of difficult there because, I mean, if you're on YouTube, all the stories you can tell, NBC, CNN versus Fox News versus Forbes, whatever it is, you have to almost look at both to find the truth because they are both so slanted. And I swear, like, for example, if I got to hear one more time that J.D. Vance admitted to creating stories, I'm like, y'all better stop. That's not what he said. That was a completely turning of his words from one interview. And they do it to both sides. So it's almost like, well, where do you go? What do you look at?
Well, that's the media. Remember, the media's job is to put together a product that people will consume. Right? Mm-hmm. If they say one thing and you don't watch, they're not going to do that thing. If they do other thing and you do watch, they're going to do that thing. So if they make it salacious, if they try to prod and make chaos happen, they're going to do that if we as the consumers watch. I love when the ratings come out and those people who are salacious end up hemorrhaging viewers because the consumers are guiding and directing the end product, and then they do less of that. You watch, even like CNN got hardcore liberal for a little while. Their ratings went the tank, so they moderated a little bit, and their people got a little bit better. If you watch CNN right now, you'll be like, somebody said something in one of those meetings that said, we got to get off the ship because we're going to be out of business if we keep
I mean, it might be a little better.
It's a little better.
From what I'm seeing, it's still very
biased. But what exposes is when you watch someone who you painted them a certain way, and all of a sudden like they take a different angle, mm-hmm. right? And they're like, there was nothing authentic about them. If somebody could have said something to you, and now your whole belief system and structure changes because it's a threat to your prosperity. You can't make money if you feel that way, so you're going to change the way you are so you can continue making money.
Yeah.
It's a corrupt system that's full of nepotism, that all you do is give these cushy jobs to people, and all they do is do what they're supposed to do once they're there. So if you want to talk about lobbyists destroying the lawmaking because of the money that's flowing in that guides people's opinions and directions, the same lobbying happens, whatever you call it, going into media and structuring narratives through media. You ever watch those compilations of the media saying the exact same verbiage about something, almost like it was handed to them as what they're supposed to say?
Oh, yeah. I've not seen a compilation, but I've been noticing it just watching it. Yeah, it's the same verbiage, the same lines, which, again, I think the candidates do as well. It's like they all get, here are our 5 go-to phrases, and if you were in a pinch or you don't want to answer a question or you maybe need something to throw out there to deflect, use this phrase. And I'm just like, can we not accept that? Like, don't accept that. Answer the question. Don't give me one of your phrases. And I mean, and it's both sides, but.
Yeah, but what you said about having a debate on someplace else away from the same people, they're going to be pissed off about it. Like, because that is their thing. Yeah. And it's sacred. And you don't take away. The public needs it on the CBS nightly news or the debate stage that, as we saw it last night. Yeah. You start splitting it off and making it a round table, 2 guys talking about it with an objective moderator that just wants to get to answers, and you will watch this entire thing blow up. The first one that happens will be the end of the mainstream media.
Oh, and you can see, too, I mean, we've talked before about how these news organizations, they are still shows. It's still television to them. They still need to make money and create interest. So I almost look at a debate like last night as maybe a threat to these news organizations that are like, whoa, this was too easy, too civil. I mean, because really, nobody was up in arms today. Nobody was going at it today. We're only discussing it because that's what we do, is we discuss things that just happened.
If you have to discuss it.
Yes, but it's like, where's the controversy? Where's the big moment that's going to keep people talking? Where's they're eating dogs and cats from last night? You know what I mean? Like, it was so cordial and went so well and smoothly that I could almost see the news organizations being like, shit. You know, like, we gotta
All right, so let me give you a historical, sort of metaphor. So let's just say the Colosseum is packed, right? Mm-hmm. You have the warrior in the middle of the arena, and they release the tiger. And the tiger just kind of lays down, and the warrior is just kind of petting the tiger, and they're kind of getting along over there. The king is going to be furious.
Yeah.
So what is the king going to do? Going to, irritate the tiger?
Yep.
Going to irritate the tiger, see if we can get that tiger to eat the warrior, or at least the warrior give him enough reason to kill the tiger. But if that doesn't work, then you're going to have to put like the giant in there, and the giant's going to have to come in. Somebody's got to die. The Colosseum will be the most no one will show up the next time. They'll sell less whatever they ate at the Colosseum, popcorn, I don't know, whatever they eat. But they will keep ramping it up until they get what they were after, and that is blood. They need blood to hit the dirt in the Colosseum, or else the Colosseum doesn't have a purpose. Yeah. The only way you do that is you have to change what goes on in the Colosseum, or you have to get your blood.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so where do we go from now here? So you mentioned that whether or not you thought anything changed by that. Do you see Trump and Kamala? Because now we have... This is a game changer, because we saw what a debate's supposed to look like. Yeah. And if we have another debate, it's not going to be that, right?
Yeah. So is there going to be another debate? I want there to be. I want to see them again. Supposedly not. I think there should be. Do you think there'll be another one?
I think, well, see, October's a weird month, because this is when they and the machine start making October surprises happen to see what will unsettle the other side, right? So I think to get to know the candidates, we don't really need that anymore. We know it. Trump's a brash guy that says weird things and dominates conversations with just repeating the same stuff all and over again. So he's not going to say anything new. So seeing that again, Kamala's just a plant, right, that they're trying to polish up to overcome the fact that she's a terrible speaker and really unliked by most people. So given the two, Trump probably has nothing to gain and a lot to lose by doing it. Kamala probably has a lot to gain if they're able to polish her up and give another instance where she does well against Trump. So I think she will probably set him up to deny another debate, but I don't think he has any interest whatsoever. I think they've painted her as this election being about her, and I think she loses the longer this election is about her. If they can't... The problem with Trump is that they dislike him so much, everything that could be said about him has already been said.
Yeah.
So they have to manufacture new things to say, or else it's just a repeat of stuff that everybody already knows. Nobody's going to turn against Trump. I mean, if they said something tomorrow, you probably already knew about it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Because I think their biggest game plan in the debates is kind of poke the bear, get him to go on the defensive, to say outlandish things, to look childish or immature, which is pretty easy to do from what I've seen.
But it was ineffective. Like, they tried that with the last one, and you saw the poll numbers normalize. Her poll numbers were really high because she was brand new. They were on the honeymoon. So she was way down here, and because it was not Joe Biden, her poll numbers went up, but it's now normalizing. And they did all the things they knew how to do, and it didn't affect it. So it's already set, right? And so my point with the October surprises, there's going to be little things that happen, like the North Carolina thing, right? It's going to be photo ops and who can look better in front of North Carolinians. And if she's painted a certain way, I think I saw that she was in the plane and she was writing on a piece of paper and she was talking on the phone. She looked like she was engaged in a disaster. And do you understand what that really was?
I didn't see that photo.
Right, so you remember Katrina?
Yeah.
And George W. Bush did not want to physically visit because he didn't want to disturb what was going on with his presence. So he looked out the window at the devastation below, right? And he was endlessly mocked as an uncaring, hates black people, the whole thing, right? It was the downward spiral moment for W. Bush as Katrina. He and Katrina and that window photo undid George W. Bush. So they were parlaying that, where she too did not want to get on the ground and disturb things, and she didn't want to glare out the window and have a George W. Bush moment. So they had put a blank sheet of paper in front of her to make it look like she was working on something, and a phone. And this was the funny part. Did you see that picture?
No.
So they had her in front of a desk with a blank sheet of paper, and they zoomed in on the paper, and there was nothing written on the piece of paper. You expect to do that, where it was okay, guys. It's all choreographed, okay? It's a setup. Everything is. If you think that there's legitimacy in anything that you see, you're watching WWF.
I have said that during the first Trump assassination attempt. This super famous photo of him doing this. I was like, no way that just organically happened. No way. That for sure. They took that picture. It was everything they needed. It was a perfect sight and image. And if you think that in any way was a complete and sheer coincidental accident.
I love that you're going down conspiracy theory boulevard. I love that about you.
Drank the Kool-Aid.
I'll get the tinfoil hat on you before long.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the picture could have been pitched as she's doing due diligence, she's staying out of the way, she's still engaged, and on premise it was a smart play, right? But then of course the phone wasn't the earphones that she had in wasn't plugged into the phone, and she wasn't writing anything on the paper. So they pulled it apart, and I don't know. I mean, I've witnessed pictures of tablets that look like there's nothing on there. There could have been something. There might not have been anything. I don't know. But again, they took a risk because they tried to paint her in a light. Nobody feels that way about her. They don't feel like she's a serious candidate who got right in there and started helping North Carolina dig out.
Because I saw on Facebook people were sharing this photo, and in the photo it's Trump and another guy who looks like he's some sort of, I don't know, professional, not like a first responder, but somebody. And they said it was taken in like Valdosta, Georgia, and Trump is in these big boots and this gear, and they're wading through waters, and he's walking with this guy in the water, and it's so clearly AI. The hands look different. All the words in the picture are jumbled, and it's like, that's not a real photo. And so now I don't even know like who actually did what. Everyone's like, well, Trump did go to Valdosta, Georgia. Maybe he did. I don't know. Did he get in the water? Did he whatever? But this photo did not look legit. But people see that and they're like, oh, look at this. Share. Look what he's doing. He's down there and he's in it and he's in the thick of it. And I'm just like.
See, I always hope that they take it too far and make it absurd, because when it's in small doses, it's believable, right? And it's effective. Like, you and I aren't swayed by it. We're not like, hey, did you see that picture? I am totally changing my vote.
Yeah.
Right? But there's some people who get exposure to that, and then they're like, oh, look at that. Trump was eating a cat. Like, I saw it with his SpaghettiOs, right?
Yeah.
But if they go to an absurd level, right, and they start doing it all over, then people are like, I can't believe anything that I see. These crafted photographs of her, in Air Force Two.
I saw Trump, there was one, they have him up a telephone pole, working on telephone lines.
Right, I saw that too. And so if it goes to an absurd level, then that ruins it, because there's not going to be these, these creative types that think that they're going to change a narrative by choreographing a photo that elicits some kind of response from middle of the road voters. It's just not effective. Remember, this is Coliseum, kill the tiger type of blood sport. This is not she looks so presidential, and I'm totally voting for That doesn't resonate. That does not work at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I still feel like this is just so, they try to make it so emotion driven for this whole thing. And unfortunately, some people are gullible enough to buy into that and not actually think about what they're seeing or what they're reading or what they're hearing. I always tell people, I'm like, if you hear something that sounds so outlandish that you're instantly ticked off or upset by it or something, you're like, I can't believe they did that, then go see if they actually did. Don't just take that for what somebody told you. Granted, if it came from Trump's mouth, maybe he did actually say it, but go research that. Go see the interview that they said it in. Go see the full context.
For yourself.
Yes.
And I do this about once a week, is I will pick, usually I just scroll past that stuff because it's all bullshit, but I like pick one a week, and I'll say, I'm going to see what they were telling me. If you're summarizing what happened, let me see how accurate you got. How many times do I read the article and say, oh, they nailed that? Almost never. Like, it's almost every time I'm like, come on. That's not what you relayed to me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, like, I keep bringing this up, but the clearest example is this whole J.D. Vance thing. And they said he created a news story. He lied to get this to happen. What he said was, I created a news story by bringing attention to this topic. Meaning, it wasn't a news story. We talked about it, and now it is a news story. Not, I completely fabricated a made-up lie, and I made a story, and I created this whole buzz, and it was totally my doing. And those words, I created a news story, was not used in the way that they are trying to make it seem. And again, both sides do this to each other, but it's so infuriating to where I can't even sit, when I see people argue on Facebook, I'm like, you're too far gone. Nothing I say is going to change your mind. But when I see these things, I'm like, look, not to pick sides, but that's not true. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. That's fake. This is fake. I saw a video somebody put of Kamala Harris. I can't remember what she was saying in the video, but they were all, I can't believe Kamala said this. She's so ridiculous. And I was like, do you honestly not see that is an AI generated video? The mouth doesn't even match the words. Like, it's so clearly fake. Why do you all do this? It's so ridiculous.
All right, let's talk about polling.
Polling. Okay.
So I think more people should understand how polling works so they can get a good handle on what they're reading. Okay, so polling, how does scientific polling work? How do you give me a literal, if I said I want to run a presidential poll, how would you engineer it so that what you polled would accurately reflect what's about to happen? What would be a smart way? What would be a dumb way?
So that what you poll was an accurate reflection of what's about to happen.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to begin.
Okay, so I'll tell you some things and you tell me if that's the way that you think they should do it.
Okay.
Right? So, number one, do you think who you ask matters?
Yes.
Okay, so if you wanted to get a good cross-section of voters, likely voters, whatever, you would pick people that maybe 100 Democrats and 100 Republicans? Mm-hmm. I mean, does that sound like a
from both sides,
equal side?
Uh-huh.
Or would you just go to a music festival and talk to 100 random people? Would we give you a more accurate representation of what's about to happen?
Oh, yeah. You need to go different locations, different types of people, and different
So you think
areas.
like at a music festival, you might be slanted more liberally, and so that the effects of the poll would reflect not necessarily how people would vote, but by people who go to music festivals.
Yeah,
vote, right?
absolutely.
So the science behind polls, it really matters. So when polls go really wrong, like they get it completely wrong, do you think I could ask you a question and get a different response? Like if I said to a regular person, hey, who are you voting for in this election? Versus, you're not voting for Trump, are you? Right? So wording of the polls probably matters. Like
absolutely.
what did you actually ask and who did you ask it to matters.
Sure.
That was also poll weighting. WEIGHT, weighting, right?
Oh, okay.
Poll weighting is where you give somebody more of a weight when they say it, okay? So if you said that this poll was taken 60% Democrats, 40% Republicans as a weighted poll. Now, the response is, if now I win the poll, 60% said that they were going to vote for Biden or Kamala Harris, and 40% were going to vote for Trump, would you say that the weighted poll gave you a reflection of the general population?
I mean, if it's weighted, isn't that obviously biased from the get-go?
Well, I want to get your real take before we,
So you're saying if it were that, would I think that that's a good snapshot of the general population? No.
Okay.
Because it's weighted to one side.
Okay. Now, what if the electorate, if I say the electorate votes, 60% of Democrats are likely to vote and only 40% of Republicans are likely to vote. Now, when I weight my average, if you polled 100 and you got that same average, do you think that is more likely to line up with what actually would happen?
if you pulled the average of who's likely to vote.
Yeah, so the electorate, Democrats are more likely to vote. 60% of them vote. They get all inspired and they go out and vote. And 40% of Republicans, they're apathetic and they just might not even go to the polls. So when I talk to 100 and 100, I've then kind of superimposed the likelihood that that group would even vote.
That still feels a little weighted.
So what are polls supposed to do?
I mean, they're supposed to sort of give you an idea of where people are sitting on this topic.
Okay.
But clearly not a good one.
All right. So if I said the Republicans are winning, right? Does that make Republicans more likely to vote or less likely to vote?
Republicans are winning. Are they more likely or less likely? I feel like they're going to be less likely because they're like, we're winning. We got it in the bag.
Don't even really need my vote. We're winning. So if you can skew a poll that looks like you're winning early or losing early on and you can inspire voters, it's just another tool of the campaigns, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because you always hear, we need these people, we need that people, we need them to win this. And so then that's going to charge them to get out there and do it, even if you're like, do we though? We don't really need them.
Yeah, because they probably set a lot of their strategy based on what is popular amongst the people who are likely to vote. So the sciences behind polling, I think there are some polling institutions that are really good. And the reason I bring this up is Rasmussen sent an email to the Trump campaign, and they were coordinating poll results that the Trump campaign wanted. And it was taken in the media like they were poisoning poll results to slant towards Donald Trump, because Rasmussen is regarded as a more conservative polling outlet. And some of the best polling is done where they take more conservative leaning and more liberal and then average the two out, and it gives you an idea of the averages between the two end up being more likely. But I think Trump throws a wrench in polling in general, because I think they've made him out to be that mud monster. Mm-hmm. And publicly, if someone asked you what you were doing, you might be reluctant. So I think even though somebody would say they're not voting for Trump, they might actually vote because it's a little radioactive to say it is what you do. So if he's polling a 2, he might actually be polling a 4, right?
Yeah.
Versus there's not many Kamala Harris voters who would be a little reluctant to say, I'm voting for Kamala. So hers might be true. Trump's might be a little undervalued.
Oh, yeah. I think in the last couple of elections, depending on who you say you're voting for, people make all kinds of assumptions about you. And so, I mean, I've even been afraid to do that. Unless I was like hardcore for someone, I'd be like, I don't know. We'll
and it's
see.
More likely for someone to say, I haven't decided yet, to get out of the deal. So that middle ground where undecided voters are in the middle, there's probably not as many undecided. You could probably section a lot of those undecided voters out as make them Trump voters, only that they didn't want to answer the question when they were on the phone.
I mean, yeah, because I still tell people I'm undecided. And I am, but I'm definitely leaning towards one, for sure. And I've been in situations where somebody started talking about politics and asked me, and I said, oh, well, I'm undecided. And then you still get all this input. But what about this? But what about this? Or how could you not know this? Or how could you not want to be for this? And it's just like, that's why I said I'm undecided.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But now, if polling, I think polling gets even worse from this point on. I think the sciences could be good around polling, but because they're used as a tool of campaigns, then they're just paying for the results that they want to see. And as the public, I don't think it's very useful anyhow. I mean, to see who's winning when so much stuff will happen between now and November, like those October surprises could push this thing in a crazy different direction.
Yeah.
But I do think we're still, I don't think Kamala has as much support as her polling shows. And I think it's normalizing. And I think there's still a lot more that could bring that back up. It could be a coin flip race. But this is probably the most unsure that I've been about how things are going because of how things played out during this election season.
Yeah. Would you say I wonder sometimes what the numbers would look like on people that are for their candidate in this election because they like that candidate versus they just hate the other. You know, I feel like we've had so many elections lately where it was just someone saying, I am for so-and-so because I really hate so-and-so. When really it's like, okay, well, if that candidate was put up against anyone else, would you feel so strongly? I don't know.
I wish more people would feel that way. We just have such bad choices these last, at least 10 elections, that if you're not picking the better of the two evils, or at least picking the one that you hate less, then it says more as a reflection of us more than anything.
But again, I mean, look at if we saw the debate like last night with Vance and Walz, and those were our two presidential candidates, and that's how the entire election season went. What the heck would people talk about? It's like they so clearly are willing to work together. They have a lot of the same ideas. It's just really differences on how to get there. That would be awesome, I think, for our mental health and our stress levels and the unrest in our country. But I mean, people that profit from the fighting, they're not going to have it.
They are only relevant because of the chaos. They
Right.
have every interest in making more chaos happen, because typically you didn't know any news anchors except for the ones your parents watched on TV.
Right.
Because they were irrelevant. They had a function of giving information, and they could have been Bob or Tom, and I don't care which one gave it to me.
Yeah.
But we've created these personalities and these opinion people that now we know their names, and what they're covering we shouldn't care about as much as we do.
Yeah, and it's so obviously opinion-based. And then I started seeing things, like for years, I've always had the Today Show on in the morning when I get ready for work. That wasn't really even a conscious decision. It just was on. And I like some of the other things they do. Like they have concerts and celebrities on that I like. And, it was just had an upbeat feeling. I like some of the segments they did, so it was on. So for years, it was like the Today Show. That is unbiased news. And Fox News is totally biased. Well, then I started paying more attention to things like interviews that I found online and watching the full interviews of things rather than snippets, and hearing what a candidate actually said versus what was told to me that they said. And I started seeing all these little things where I'll hear somebody explain something and I say, oh yeah, I like that. And then you turn on the Today Show or you turn on Fox News or whatever it is, and you hear them report a completely different view of it.
Yep.
They twisted their words. They labeled them something. They did it with RFK. I've heard numerous interviews from RFK's own mouth about vaccines and him stating he is not anti-vax and gives all this information. And then you turn on the news and they say, just like anti-vax candidate RFK says blah, blah, blah. I was like, what? Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? And they put these labels on it. And that's when I started seeing those. That's when I was like, you lost all credibility with me. All of it. They all do it, and it's ridiculous. And I'm just like, turn off the TV because you're not getting anything. I used to laugh when people got all up in arms about things like involving the military, because my husband was military for 20 years, and they have these high opinions of all these things that are happening in the military. And I'm just like, and you think that because you saw it on the news, you watch the news and you think you know something. Turn off the news.
So objectivity in the media, we've said, slants heavily in the liberal direction. Mm-hmm. What about academia? Like what we're teaching people? And I saw a couple of charts that said that 80% of faculty and professors are liberal. So do you think, just like the slanting and changing of words on the young, impressionable minds can take effect where we can create and indoctrinate the next generation of liberals if we're able to say, poison their brains at a young age? So how do we, though, how do we take bias out of those institutions? Like, what would be the mechanism to make sure that we say, okay, this institution can hire 50-50 split conservatives and liberals. And in media, you have to hire 50% liberals and conservatives. Is that really the only way to do it? Or can you almost bet that they are going to take a side and teach the side and be the side in their professional capacity, even if they're not doing it consciously?
Oh, absolutely. And like you just said, consciously, I think you're almost never going to have that, because if someone has a deep-rooted feeling about something and then their job is to teach about it,
how can you not?
Right. There's going to be bias in it. Absolutely. I do think things like universities and all of that tend to be a bit more liberal, which is probably why you see younger generations fight with older generations so much. I see that all the time. I've been there myself where,
frickin' boomers.
Yeah, the certain age group is always fighting with the older ones, and they're both acting like they don't know anything. The younger people want to say, oh, well, you're bigots or racist or you don't know and you're blind and you close your eyes to these issues. And then the older people are like, I was you. I've been there until I learned this. And neither of them are going to listen to each other. It's almost like you have to just learn on your own because you're going to be fed, depending on where you are, a certain agenda and a certain narrative. And if people are not willing to question everything, they'll just buy into it and run with it.
There's value in being a cynic to everybody.
Yeah.
Listening and hearing, right? But then filtering for yourself. And I do find and I feel like I do a pretty good job at keep exposing myself to new information. But I'll find myself every once in a while where something that I wasn't paying attention to before, I will go find somebody that I trust, right, to hear how I should feel about something. And it gnaws at me because I am blindly accepting truths that someone else has come to conclusion-wise. But how do I know that they didn't take a biased approach on this and fed me now? And now that's my new feelings about something. But it didn't happen because I decided, because I adopted it from someone else.
Yeah. And then I feel like in that case, you have to just ask yourself, why do you trust that person? Why do you hold that person so high? What is it about that person that you respect and you admire, and why you would go to them for any kind of advice? And if I'll tell you, trust that, then
our first conversation, I would trust Vance and I would trust Walz because they did two things. They admitted they were wrong, and they talked about it, and they didn't just put on a front. Yep. So if people who can admit wrongdoing, I'm more likely to say, okay, well, they're not just going to feed me BS because they stumbled on something that they did wrong and they admit the fact that they had wrong information or made a bad decision or was biased. That person I trust a lot more. Fallibility?
I agree. To me, somebody that is willing to be like, even if it's as little as I misspoke or, I got more information and I did change my view, or I used to say this about this person or this thing, but now I feel this way. 100% is more credible to me than someone that will either dodge it completely, say, well, I still think blah, 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 try to come up with an excuses. Yeah, I think sometimes candidates are so afraid of making themselves look a certain way that they're like, deny at all costs, fight that at all costs, when really that doesn't do much for their image like I think they think it does.
Right. Yeah, so I want you to pick somebody in media that you would absolutely never, ever, ever, ever trust with anything. And I want you to pick somebody who you think is honest enough that if you heard them, they've probably filtered things out. One of each. Who's the worst and who's the best?
I don't know if I can pick. So somebody I would never, ever, ever trust.
Yes.
And then somebody I would. Well, I actually used to have strong feelings that are changing. One that I used to just really, really not like was, what's his name? Tucker
Carlson?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had a real strong bias against him. I thought he was a jerk. Why are you putting your opinions in on something? You're supposed to just give us the facts, but you're an opinion-based show. You're a jerk about your views, blah, blah, blah. Then I started to see a little more of his stuff, and I've softened a bit. But someone that I was just like, oh, yeah, if they say it, that's gospel. I believe it. I mean, probably back to when, like I said, the Today Show was always on in my house. And so I liked those people. I trusted those people. I thought they're good people. They're going to give me the right information. And now that I see both sides and I see more information, I don't trust any of them, unfortunately.
The worst is, I think her name was Carolyn Collins.
I don't know.
So she's the worst. Like she's the most condescending person that I've ever heard speak to anyone. She actually moderated one of the debates and she was the absolute worst. So she is terrible.
What network is she with?
CNN, I think.
Okay.
I think she's a CNN reporter. But anyway, and then the best is actually a CNBC host. I think his name is Joe Kern. Now, he is a conservative, but he's a economic conservative. And so when he talks about things that are outside of his lane, I think he puts it through the most logical filters that I've ever heard. I don't think he's equally, if you're going to take Carolyn Collins and say that she's like condescending and egotistical and whatever, he's that, but I feel that he's more right about what things he said rather than the ideology of Carolyn Collins. So those are my two. Joe Kern on CNBC. He doesn't weigh in on a lot of things outside his lane, but I trust that what he does say has some factual basis to it.
See, and I feel like I'm one of those maybe sort of emotional people that it's not even so much what they're talking about or what they're saying, but the way they're saying it. I feel like when they get into this like sort of brash and insulting and condescending tone, it's almost like, I don't know, are you not grown up enough to deliver information in a more respectable way?
Professionalism.
Right.
100%.
Exactly. But I feel like all of it is becoming opinion. All of it. Like every time I turn on any program on whether it's CNN, Fox, NBC, MSNBC, any of it, it's all opinion shows. And it's like, where's just the unbiased factual news? Doesn't exist. I don't know where to find it.
You won't subscribe for it. You won't click on it.
Yeah, because it's not as
gonna
exciting.
Exist. Exactly. This is the Coliseum, and we need blood. We do.